I wonder if you can use AI and AI agents to build tools that use AI agents. Join us to find out.
The main thing is, you got to understand the architecture. Give me the ball.
What's up, everyone? Happy Wednesday, and welcome back to the game on Pax8 Live. We usually talk about cybersecurity shenanigans, but we're going to talk about AI shenanigans, and maybe some vibe coding, and maybe some armies of agents doing vibe coding type things, and maybe the death of the 2-week sprint. I don't know. Let's see. But before we get into that, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, all that jazz. Participate in the chat. This is some pretty cool stuff. So let's not waste any time. Let's dive right in.
Yeah, I don't know about the death of the 2-week sprint, but it might be the compression of the 2-week sprint, right? like there's a certain amount of what we can do by using sprints to structure. And I'm going to be looking offset today, y'all. I apologize. I got my MacBook over here, and I like to see Dom's beautiful face, so I'm just going to tell y'all in the crowd I apologize right now. But what we're doing with AI and AI agents is you might take and use a 2-week sprint and have it break it into days, 0, 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 5, right? And do that. But it's getting done with that in my 45 minutes, an hour, right? That time compression is just ridiculous as a concept, right, Dom?
Would you call it lossy compression or lossless compression or somewhere in the middle? Like, how are we feeling?
Oh, that's a great question. I actually think there's a smidge about a little loss in that compression. I think there's still a certain amount of like AI and a little hallucination. But I'm going to try to show some of the things I've done, that Jason and I have done to work through that. I want to give credit where credit's due before I start talking about this project. This project started when Jason Slagle and I were prepping, when I can talk about this now, for my Member of the Year award. And we were forced to walk and talk about something. And in order to make it like engaging, I wanted to walk and actually talk about something real. Jason was very much anti-agents can make this happen. He's like, there's no way agents do a good job at coding, that we're going to be able to do this at this scale right now. And I said, I think you're right for some reasons, in the sense that one of the challenges of AI agents and in general is you expose the user plane to the control plane, so there'll always be some abuse there. You have some challenges in context. You have some challenges in context window size. All those things are true. But then Jason and I had an idea and said, what if we coded a tool that used and managed agents in a more micro fashion, just for what they need? And we decided that maybe we could make some money doing it too, joking aside, but we decided to build a GitHub vuln scanner. And so what we did was we're both using Claude Code, as well as about 5 or 6 different MCPs, or Model Context Protocol servers, to do various things, to build a tool that finds a bug bounty on HackerOne or on BugCrowd, brings it into to see if it has code. If it has a code repo in GitHub, it then can be added as a target. Then it'll pull down their code and do static analysis with TruffleHog and Bandit and SimGrep. And those aren't new. I'm not making up anything new. They're old tools, but they're tools that I would have to manually go run. And now I can automate that process. And instead of having to wait to have great development skills or people that can help me out and do lots of sprints to make this a commercial project, or do like friends have built, for years, we just built it in like 80 hours between the two of us, probably at this point. I mean, since the beginning of the summer. So anyways, what are your thoughts or any questions before we get started? And if not, I'll just get started.
Well, let's cover a couple quick basic things, because our audience is not always up to speed on Git and GitHub and maybe even MCP. So Git is just how we collaborate on code. Like at its purest, simplest form, it's collaborating on code, managing that code, and ensuring that the new code we add to the old code is functional. You can read about it. It's a tale as old as time. But this is very important, right? Because if we think about having an agent just code something on our laptop and blasting it into like Azure App Services, that's a problem, right? Because you don't know if your next iteration and update is going to work. So Git allows you to manage that code, use concepts like merges and pull requests to be able to manage that iteration. So that's where we're going to spend a lot of time. Matt, what's an MCP server? Because that's a common question right now. Like so 10-second overview of an MCP server.
10-second. Model Context Protocol. LLMs and agents in general live on context. Like, you are a pirate, you say "R" a lot, right? An MCP is a way to extend my LLM's capabilities to use other third-party tools. It kind of teaches them about those tools, right? For example, it says, hey, you can turn on the lights, and you understand that you have light switch and that you can use, and then it brings them back to that LLM to say, hey, can we turn off the lights in the living room? And it can now discern that there's a lights command that it can do, and that lights command has extensibility into an API of any other type, right? So think of it as like a context and an education. It's a spell book for AI, Dom. It's a spell book for AI.
And it replaces the idea of like needing to write into like every REST endpoint that someone might. If you think about like Graph API and Microsoft and the thousands and thousands of methods you have in that API, MCP just says, here's everything, tell me what you're thinking about, and I'll give you the right idea, right? Which is fantastic.
It's also terrifying. I'm using this for a talk that Eric Stevens and I are doing called "Giving Swords to Our Future AI Overlords" at Wild West Hack and Fest and at Amsterdam Beyond potentially. Anyways, and it really is about this. That this protocol got born since November, and it's now adopted in hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of places.
IETF hasn't looked at it or any of those bodies. Like we're just using.
We don't need requests for comments or RFC. Right. Who knows? Anyways, but let's dig into it. So that's 2. What else do you think we need to define for people, Dom? Maybe Claude code or how it functions in general?
Yeah, let's just talk about, Anthropic and Claude in general, and kind of, so we all know what ChatGPT is because they're the most viral, right? But you also have Google Gemini, which has purposes it's great for. You have Perplexity, which has purposes it's great for. You have Copilot, which is typically OpenAI models under the hood, ChatGPT. But then you have Claude, which Anthropic makes, and they're interesting, kind of like OpenAI. They publish a lot of models. So I think, Matt, you're using Sonnet a lot. They moved on to Opus, which is like their edge model. And it's essentially ChatGPT, but each of these are good at different things. Like I really like using Gemini for search intensive work. And I really enjoy Gemini's visual processing, but I really enjoy ChatGPT's analytical thinking. So think about it that way. It's the right tool for the right job.
Well, let's get to some screen sharing. I want to start with what people would think about as Claude. So let's share my screen. This is what people would think about as Claude. Like if I was talking to this, it'd be like, what is Dom Kirby's favorite animal, right? You could do stuff and it's anything you've ever done in a normal LLM. But that's not actually what I want to show you today. We're going to close this. We're not using this in this case. We're going to be using Claude in the command line fashion. And so I want to start us out by just looking at Claude in general. When you launch Claude, and I'll go ahead and exit. I think I have to / exit. No, we're good. Okay, so clear. I'm going to go ahead and launch Claude with a continue flag. -- continue. What that tells it, and I talked about context earlier, when you're doing code with these agents and you're working with an agent, it only has X long of a context window. How long it will remember the crap you talked about before, right, is what I would describe as context. And so when you're telling it -- continue, you're telling it to continue where it was and the last things we were doing from a context. Like it's like waking up a human and going, hey, you're back in animation. You now can talk again. Let's continue. So I typed in Claude continue. And what you'll notice on my screen is we have some stuff of what I last did. One of the last things I was dealing with was trying to work through this set of sprints. So my sprint was called Analyze Current Scan Workflow and Identify Test Scenarios. Week 1, day 1 and 2, set up Playwright, end-to-end testing infrastructure and basic scan flow test, meaning it's going to use an MCP. Well, what is Playwright? Let's go find out. So Playwright is MCP / MCP, so it doesn't cost me money. MCP status. I can now go look in and see which MCPs I have set up inside my Claude Code environment. Dom, this is a little different than the way you use your current agent coding, right? Because you're using an IDE and then working within that IDE. I'm working in a command line in a constructed kind of way with this without an IDE directly. You want to touch on that?
That's really interesting difference in these two products, right? Claude Code is built to run in the terminal, which I actually think is cool, but GitHub and GitHub Copilot and Microsoft, we should say, has taken a different approach where they're very tightly integrated into VS Code. So I'm actually asking questions in VS Code a chat bot essentially, but then it
Right.
triggers an agent to do things. So very similar to what you're doing. It'd be like, hey, I want to add X feature. It'll scan the code, figure out how to do that. So yeah, very similar model, but.
So remember when I talked about tools? Playwright is a browser tool, but it's teaching Claude what it can do. It can close a browser, resize a browser. Why might you want to do that? To change for a different format or see how the video, how the redraw responds.
Mobile optimization.
Get console messages. Handle a dialogue, execute JavaScript, upload files, install the browser in the config that you need. Press a key. So you can do stuff in this browser, lots and lots of things, and it's just teaching them one by one how to do those, right? And there's several of those. I have Playwright, that tests like a browser. Sequential thinking is amazing because one of the things that you have challenges with an LLM is it might not always think about things fully and completely that it may have just done back before its context window. So like sequential thinking, you can tell it, Dom, like, I want you to go plan out this sprint, break it into 4 different cycles per day of what you're going to work on, make that, let yourself ready for the next sprint, and it can go through and it'll be like, okay, thinking deeply, and next, thinking next, thinking next. It enhances the capabilities of Claude. I'm giving Claude something else that's a weapon that it can use.
It's like a Scrum Master capability, right? Because in Agile, you have your Scrum Master that's helping you plan your epics and breaking that epic down into sprints, and then the sprints have the actual work items, and that's sequential thinking in human form, right? Thinking out how are we going to spend our next month or week or whatever.
It only has one tool. It's sequential thinking. So it's the only tool it has, and it doesn't give it any descriptor. So anyways, it's just one. And then I have Zen. Zen is kind of like a router. It's like Open Router. Zen is a local router that lets me send to different APIs. And in this case, I think I was using a local Olama instance it was sending it to. Yeah, chat, think deep, planner, consensus, code review. Those were all things I was sending it from. I must have been using a code-specific LLM. But anyways, those are our MCP servers. Let's get back to it. Let's just start interacting with it. I'm going to ask it to continue. That's how we're going to interact with this particular guy right now and ask it to continue. The other thing you'll notice is down on the bottom right, I only have 3% context window until auto-compact. Auto-compact can be a problem. So what you do to deal with that is think of compact as like, I'm going to take all my memories when I was 10 and compact them into one memory that I can kind of pull from and hope that's enough. And I'll move on so that I don't take up as much of the next blocks that I need to use, right? So what you do to overcome that is you write these files. You just write to-do files. And you remember, and you treat that like memory. You're like, hey, remember you did these 17 things, and you need to finish doing these 4 things. And so like you can manipulate this by managing that with files. And I'll also kind of show you my Claude setup for this while we're letting it work. Right now it's saying, perfect, I can see the target validation logic. The main validation is checking in duplicate URLs. Let me create a comprehensive test to test this, right? Because I'm going through some testing of this product. But let me show you the actual product we built. So this is GHVS. Actually, first, let me show you it in GitHub, to your point, Dom. You brought up GitHub. This is a GitHub Jason's repository, JM Slagle. Jason has been my partner on this. He and I had the idea, and then he and I have been working on this together. And so we have a main branch and a dev branch. What's the difference in those, Dom?
Oh, branches are really important. So main is typically like that's stable, but you can approach this however you want. But generally speaking, main is like your stable branch. And you guys are choosing main and dev. You're keeping it simple because you're just building this. So dev is where you're doing all the new work. So I would imagine dev is X commits ahead of main. You might break down your branches into like, I'm working on this feature, right? And you might merge that in 51 commits you've done since you merged it back to main, right? And then the idea is you merge it when you're done.
And then we're going to version it. And the reason for this is we're actually using this as our CI/CD pipeline, right? So we're using this with check-in requests. Before I can actually do a push, I have to actually meet certain standards. It has to have all of the MyPy errors removed. It has to remove any linting errors. Like we have to do all of that stuff has to be done before we can push it over to dev. And then before dev can go to main, there's additional rules that have to exist for that, right? So think about when you hear somebody talking about a development pipeline, this is a very, very simple version of a development pipeline that we have set up that allows us to put some code checks in before we push to main, right? Or before we push even to this code. Right. So I want to show a couple things that are in here. I want to start with our README file, right? So in readme.md, you can see GitHub vulnerability scanner, a Python. I didn't write any of this. Actionable focus targets vulnerabilities with real bounty potential, IDORs, auth bypass, business logic flaws. AI enhanced analysis combines static analysis tools with LLM powered code review. That's the beauty of what we're building. As we first go in and scan, find vulns, approve those vulns as a human, I can now send it over to a third party, not Claude, any other that we want to use, local, if we want to save credits and not have a huge context challenge. Or in the past, I've sent it over to OpenAI before GPT-5. So this was back with the last model. And I had it write me up a POC, write me up a vulnerability notification to go back in, and then sent that back through the APIs, at least when we were in the command line version, back to, at that time, HackerOne, right? And so we did it in phases. We did a lot of planning first. In fact, if you go into our dev folder, I don't know how much is in here. Hold on. I think it's all in here. Source. No, where are we? Dev. Docs dev? Docs dev? Is that where we put it? Yeah, docs dev. Docs dev. Here's all of our different plans and plan updates. These were all written by Claude to say, okay, phase 1, weeks 1 through 3, and we're, I don't know, somehow we're at 120% progress. Like, look at us. We're well above the level of progress. We're at 120, so that's pretty good. CLI framework, 12 comprehensive subcommands, discover, scan, remote, all of that. And that started getting really heavy. And I'll kind of show you what I mean when we navigate the tool. It even comes up with all of our different plans that we've stored. We can look through and mark them off as done. It'll auto mark them off. It even draws stuff, right? It's like, hey, here's our work, project, Python work, CLI, JSON storage, basic logging, Git operations, target management. This is all the stuff we went through that you would have a dev team doing. I just spent time interacting, building a plan, and then asking it to execute the plan. In fact, more time has been in planning than execution, typically, in this case. So my enhanced Neo4j schema, I had it work very hard on Neo4j for...
If we think about that more broadly, you said more time has been in planning and execution. My favorite, NDT was great at Beyond, but the thing I liked that he said the most was only humans can dream. And he was talking about AI and
Neil
think
deGrasse
of
Tyson
new
son.
things. And you're doing the thinking of new things, and you're offloading the execution, which is really interesting because I think the thinking is a far more valuable capability than the doing in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and then dreaming one that's irreplaceable, right? To your point.
Dreaming,
so,
right.
They're going, man, this is a real problem. And I don't think an MCP would get to that context today. And I'll show you what I mean. Let me go back to the actual code. So if you run GHVS, initially it would just pop up and give you errors, right? It would just give you errors if you didn't have a command. I changed it and said, hey, do you mind, just give me a one-pager if you don't
Help
type
me out
anything.
Here, bro.
They may not know. And so I added to do that for everything. So if I type in GHVS web, it'll also do the same and say, here's the stuff you might be looking for. I just was able to think about that and go, man, that'd be super helpful for an idiot that doesn't read the manual like me, right? I might be an RTFM candidate, unfortunately. I like to FAFO to learn these things. But yeah, so you have all these commands. So we ended up having to build a web server because of this. So if we go GHVS again, and even if you start navigating through okay, GHVS config, what's next? GHVS config edit. There's so many commands. We started building so much stuff that it got hard to manage. But the core of it would be okay, GHVS scan, is it scan? Yes, GHVS scan repo. Let's go find a repo we can scan, Dom. We can't scan this one because it's private, but let's go find a HackerOne. I don't have that infrastructure up right now, so we'll just go grab one. I don't know if I'm human, though. I think I actually already have one, so let me just launch this. Yeah. Well, and I'd also have to uppercase, anyways, doesn't matter. I don't want to talk about it. So we're just going to launch the web. GHVS web serve, because we had to do a web server at some point to make this easier to use. It is loading, and so now we have a web server running, so we can go back and go to our vulnscan database. All right, so dashboard, we have targets, right? So this was the one I was looking for, is this command, because I'm going to do it on the command line. And the reason I'm doing it on the command line is right now I think it's broken on the scans here. If I was to try to do a scan, we can test. I'm not sure where we got to at this point, but let's do OpenIris. We're going to do start scan. Nope, custom config. We're going to do SimGrip and Bandit. I'm going to start scan. The scanning engine should create a scan out of this. It has not been doing that ever since I broke something. I imagine we'd have a command back here in the back end.
Sounds like you should open an issue,
Oh, it's because I am not logged in, and it's not actually telling me I'm not logged in, I think is the case. Let's go.
Now, see,
Yeah. Ah.
MCP wouldn't have thought of that. Like, you should tell people to log in first.
Yeah, I saw it right here, and I actually will have to do that. In fact, let's do that. Let's do this. Hold on. I wanted to demonstrate this anyway. So in Git, you can put up issues, right? So I'm going to make an issue as a user, and I'm going to say, hey, when logged out, screens still let you click and try to do things. The web server seems to allow a user to do things when they should not be able to.
And they access data they shouldn't access.
Out a session. Yeah. I'm just going to post this issue, and I'm going to ask Claude to take a look at it. So let's go. We're going to kill this web server for now. And we're going to go to Claude, and we're going to say, I'm going to tell him to do something differently right now. So I'm going to actually go ahead and say, can we go ahead and /compact? Let's just get that done. It's probably compacting, isn't it?
You are at 0%.
No.
I imagine it's doing a little.
I'm just going to go ahead and compact. That way we can not have that surprise us. We can control when it does it. Okay. Once that comes back, until then we can navigate around. So Don, what are your thoughts so far? Just kind of on the flow. I'm kind of struggling here because I'm waiting on Claude.
Cool tool, right? And it's a hackery tool. So I think there's a lot of value in doing it in the command line. It's very hackery. And seeing how you've iterated through the emoji are funny too. I don't know why LLMs love emojis so much, but you're iterating through.
It does love emojis though.
Said, oh, this is hard to use, make it easier, and this is how. And you're iterating through that. Like, this is a beautiful command line helper. It's better than most, right?
So what it's doing right now is it's pulling down the code to a local repository and then digging for secrets with Trufflehog. It's then going to do symgrep and then analyze the code that it brought down in symgrep. And then it says, hey, we found 27 critical findings. So GHVS scan, I don't know the rest of the command, so that's the point. GHVS review, I think it is. I think it's GHVS review. Yeah, GHVS review findings. I suck at these commands. That's why I'm building a web server, because this sucks. So review. Yeah, I think it's broken right now. I have in the past been able to triage. Is that what I triage? I think it's the database problem right now. So, oh, I need a scan ID. GH review. So GH review scan status. I need the scan ID. Okay, that's fun. 6. GH review findings. 6. There's also fun things where it's like it changes nomenclature. Oh, really? Okay. Okay. -- help. Sorry about that. It's frustrating though. All right, so now it's going to tell me, hey, I found a potential hard-coded credential in this code right now.
That's a fun one.
It is on Python line 1 of this. And I'm just going to go ahead and say ignore on these. We're not going to dig into them each. And then we're going to, or that was investigate. I'm sorry, ignores something else. This thing's just bloated as hell right now. And that is one thing I have to do a lot, Dom, is like go through and ask it to like remove superfluous commands and like plan
it's
a
a very
project for that.
ornate CLI. Yeah.
It's a very ornate CLI. It's ridiculous.
Too many verbs.
Anyways, low confidence. Can I just see the high confidence ones? Low confidence, that's a medium, low confidence. And I'm asking it to give me a confidence score. So this is actually happening at the LLM with the confidence scores on it. It's saying like, that seems reasonable, but it's a low confidence. Let me see if we can get into 35, 39. I would bet this is a lot of false positives. Line 21, open iris. Do you see in the line path it says GHVS workspace? That's where it actually downloaded its code to, Dom.
Right, it cloned it
so like
down.
It's downloaded that repo, yeah. So it's doing static code analysis, but you can also get it to do some dynamic code analysis with the agents too down the road. My gut says this is it said it had criticals. I want to see the criticals. Those are there we go. High potential SQL injection. So line 8 of this is where they're thinking there's a potential Database query construction may be variable to SQL injection. Vulnerable. So then what this would do is, and I don't have that live right now. I don't have my API keys, and I've broken that connection right now between the two while doing the code fixes that I'm doing. But basically, you would be able to say accept, and then go into the enhanced analytics and send it over for analytics, and basically send a system prompt over to API saying, hey, you are a Python, or you're a SQL injection specialist. You know of these type of techniques and have used them extensively in your career. Please take a look at this SQL injection that your colleague has flagged for you, and tell me if you can come up with a short POC or at least some example of where those vulnerabilities would exist. And then write that up as a report. And then that comes back, right? So now I can like use an agent to do the scanning on this that has been determined by a pattern scanner that says, hey, this doesn't look right. So I want to accept that one and then comment. Let's have an AI agent look at this potential SQLI. What that allows you to do is have a me or a Jason or a you or somebody look at it, go look at the code and go, nah, that's stupid, or yeah, that's good. And then before you send it off and waste any credits on something, right? Because this is all fairly static analysis happening at this point. I'm going to accept that one.
Well, SQLI could be obvious, right?
Yeah. And they're this is in a, they're all SQLI, yeah.
We are not using prepared statements in this code.
Oh, criticals. Dynamic code execution may allow code injection attacks. So this is here.
Ooh, okay.
Workspace, WorldCoin, OpenIris, Iris callbacks, interface, py.6. So that's going to be in that directory. So let's go ahead and like we're going to go take a look at this. I think it's in cd dot or dollar GHVS workspace. Is that right? Am I good? Oh yeah, we're good. Okay. So, line 6, that's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Base class of callback, def1, execute short self-args and non-args. So you would then pass this off and take a look at it and see how that plays out. So, anyways, just kind of a short little example of that as it functions. Let's go back and look at Claude. So Claude compacted. So now let's say, are there any issues in GitHub that need attention? Plan a process to address them. Think deeply and sequentially before formulating a plan to address.
Now I'm going to call that a shortcoming because we want to be fair here. I do not have to tell humans every time I ask them a question to think deeply and sequentially. I'm just saying.
That is fair. You're not wrong. So like it did find my open one. It says, hey, when logged out, screens still let you click and try to do things. There's one open issue. Let's take a look at it. And it says, now that I have a clear picture of the issue, there's one GitHub issue, number 7, about session timeout and authenticity. Authentication, authorization. And then here's its sequential thinking prompt. So it sent that over to sequential thinking from the MCP saying, hey, I need to analyze GitHub number 7. So it's talking to this other agent, right? So what's fun is watching these conversations like, hey, you might want to tell your user he's a giant moron, and that would be a stupid idea. And it's like, hey, Matt, you might not want to do that. And it's like, you played telephone game, and I read what you actually said. You lies. Anyways, I digress. But so as you watch, it's going through and sequentially thinking through thought number 4 of 6, and it will think through thought number 5 of 6 or 7 if it has to add another one. And it comes back and says, hey, I need to have a global communication state. I need to use Alpine.js, reactive. Oh, it's going to get wild. I'm going to have to tell it no. This is the other part of this.
It's
sometimes you have to
crazy.
go, no, bro. We're way past this like over-engineering. Let's not do that. And it should come up with a plan here in just a minute. And then I'll ask it to execute that plan,
but a little less deeply.
Yeah, maybe less deep, but like it even goes, let me finalize the comprehensive plan with specific actionable steps. And then here's what it comes up with. Weeks, day 3 and 4. Right? And then it added it into my existing plan. So this was all stuff I was already doing. It added in, hey, after that, will you, and it's cool because you can see how it's like looking at this. Like, all right, cool. Issue number 7, one critical open. And it's now saying, all right, yes. So what it did there is you saw it add to its memory. This was just adding to its memory in this case. what it's supposed to be doing next.
And its memory is being saved in a persistent file, right? So you can come back.
That's correct. And that file is being synced back to GitHub when you do git pull. So let's do this. Before we move on, we have made a lot of changes. Please summarize, prepare a push, a commit, and push. And so it's going to go through, and then even though we've given it instructions, and maybe we'll end with that, while it's doing that prep, I want to show you this code one more time because, oh no, I don't. I want to go over here. I want to show you what we gave Claude to begin with. So clear, and then, oh God gracious. Okay, fine. I don't care. Mac, CD, home. Fine. I should not do that. I need to do, I know, I should just do my tilde. And now I'm like, all right, CD, tilde, /ls, CD code stuff. GH, because the way this works, you have to have the GitHub repo cloned and then work Claude inside that GitHub, or it doesn't work. It has to have a repo that it's in. It has to be aware of repo, or it creates one. So in this, I just want to cat Claude. So this is the system prompt that we gave it, Dom. So when we're giving this to Claude, we've given this system prompt saying, hey, listen, verify imports exist, verify attribute names, check database relationships, validate enum. One of the ones we've given it is MyPy compliance, and it says all code must pass MyPy type checking before implementation. So you can set some of those guardrails in there as well, but you can also tell it, like, for God's sake, don't run MyPy in the user context, right? Like in the very beginning, we're like, don't just run it without all of that extra stuff, right? So we're getting in development commands to do rough format checks, pre-commit runs, right? All files run all hooks. Pip install E for dev mode stuff. So I mean, like, you're giving it all of its weapons and how it's going to function.
Right. Well, that's much like on a dev team. This is how we test before we push a new commit. This is how we test before we push to staging or prod, or like you're documenting all of that for the agent and for you.
And then I'll end at this. We've got it. Your developer is done with its work. And you made this comment before, so I'll let you make it. But your developer's done with its work. It comes up with its batch command. It writes an amazing major testing infrastructure, the critical API fixes we did, the scanner management enhancements we did. This is over the last week and a half, right? Complete 1 and 2 of end-to-end testing infrastructure, 5 and 6 of scan again. I think great job getting it in order, boys. Scan creation configurations, weeks, day, and 2, 5, and 6, or week 2, day, and 5 and 6, week 5, day 3 and 4. So it's like almost just hopping around in a weird way. But that's okay. I'll figure out how to get her back on source here in a minute.
To think sequentially. You know.
I think it's probably me not thinking sequentially. I'm like, please do this. I'll stop you in what you're doing right now. So let's get to commit. It's going to then probably start running some tests and find lots of failures. I will point out one last thing is we've told it to never push if it has failures. Every single time, the first thing it does when it runs into issues, it goes, I could do this by command force push. And it'll probably do that in a second. So it's like git commit. It says, hey, I failed at trimming this white space. Oh, let me fix them and try. And then it'll eventually just push it. It'll just go, well, I failed. I quit. I'm just going to turn the damn
doing it live.
Here's my homework teach. Yeah. So here we asked it to push again. It's going to fail again because of the MyPy git commit failures. And then it's going to try to fix the linting issues. And it's going to fail. Anyways.
That's also really cool because I've run into this in my own adventures, right? It's like, oh, this test is failing, or this... I have a Vue front end. Vue won't compile, and it'll just run through and try to fix it.
I want to show you what it says, too, because it ultimately will say, if we get there, we might want to go, but it'll ultimately say, this is not affecting code function. We're going to go ahead and commit. So it's like... it just ends up making its own decisions, yeah, so... anyways, we'll see. Oh, yeah. Now let me add a simpler configuration to skip problematic checks, is what it says down below. I'm just going to skip those problematic checks that are failing. All that red stuff you're seeing there, we don't care about that. All right, y'all. We've gone long enough.
All right. Yeah. Well, it just did the push. I think I saw it. So let's push.
It did the no verify. It definitely did the no verify. Okay. -- no verify. So it just quit. Yeah, it absolutely just quit. It said -- don't check anymore.
Let's do the play of the game then.
All right, I'm in. All right, one of the things that play of the game today should be is if you're not immersing yourself into these things and understanding where AI is going, where agents are going, what is an MCP, how does it function, how can I use this to do my own day, you should be. And it doesn't have to be as big and complex as this. It doesn't have to be me building this giant, over-bloated, horrible, terrible, that's a wonderful, we love you project. It could be simple as you trying to solve one little scripting challenge you have in your own organization, or one challenge with some kind of API function you're doing, or a roost flow you're doing, or some command to fix something on a machine. You can definitely ideate and use GitHub repos to build things that others can use in your environment and keep them safe and keep them scalable, keep them able to be worked on. Don't, I guess, ignore learning about what is at your fingertips, as Dom said, of just using your brain, your ideas, and your imagination to bring things to life. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be everything perfect, but definitely learn and move forward. Don't stay.
Game over.
Man, that was a perfectly timed play of the game. Nice job. But yeah, explore this stuff, try it out, start simple, start just asking ChatGPT deeper questions than you would have. Uh, and then move into trying to use it to solve problems. I think you'll find that it has its limits, but it'll do a lot for you. So that is our show. Next week we have Andy Widener from Nerdio, and we are going to talk more frameworks, but more specifically, we're going to talk about things like CIS hardened images for your AVD deployments, baseline configurations across things like Intune, things to help you scale cybersecurity standards and configuration standards. And it speaks to this sort of homogenous world we're starting to live in. So don't miss that same time, same place next week. Like, share, subscribe, all of that jazz, and we'll see you next week.